This was the reality of the Super Nintendo's twilight years in Japan, between 1995 and 1996, as the world's attention shifted to the 32-bit power of the Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn, and with Nintendo itself focusing on the upcoming Nintendo 64, Japanese developers were not winding down. They were hitting their stride. Now absolute masters of the aging hardware, they pushed its architecture to the breaking point, crafting some of the most ambitious, experimental, and technically astounding RPGs ever made for the system. Live Alive 1994. Released in 1994, Live Alive stands as the bold precursor to this movement. It was the directorial debut of Takashi Takeda, who would go on to co-direct Chrono Trigger and was developed by Square's esteemed Development Division 5. Takeda's vision was to create an omnibus RPG, a collection of standalone stories in a single package, a feat made possible by the expanding Super Nintendo ROM capacity of the era. To reinforce this unique structure, Square undertook an unprecedented collaboration with the publisher Shogakukan. They enlisted 7 different popular manga artists to design the main characters for the 7 core scenarios. This all-star lineup included future legends like Gosho Aoyama, creator of Detective Conan, and Yumi Tamura, creator of Basara, giving each chapter a distinct and authentic visual identity that was unheard of at the time. The game's innovation extended to its mechanics. It featured a strategic 7x7 grid-based battle system that Takeda described as real-time shogi, and streamlined the RPG experience by completely removing currency and shops. All progression was tied to exploration and combat. Yet beneath its disparate chapters lies a subtle, unifying thread of tragedy. A hidden narrative element connects every time period, the Watanabe family. In each era, a father and son duo named Watanabe appears, and in every instance, the father dies a tragic death. This recurring, somber Easter egg was a deliberate inclusion by writer Nobuyuki Inoue to represent the normal people who perish in the background of these epic conflicts, adding a profound layer of hidden, thematic depth to the game. Though a commercial failure upon its initial release, Live Alive garnered a passionate cult following over the years, which ultimately led to its celebrated HD 2D remake in 2022, finally bringing this experimental classic to a worldwide audience. Romancing Saga 3 1995. If Live Alive was the experiment, Romancing Saga 3 was the confident thesis. Released in the same year as Chrono Trigger, this 6th entry in Akitoshi Kawazu's iconoclastic Saga series was a colossal success in Japan, selling 1.5 million copies and earning a reputation that many locals feel puts it on the same pedestal as Square's more globally famous titles. This acclaim was a mystery to the West for decades as the game remained unlocalized. Its design is the culmination of Kawazu's philosophy on the Super Nintendo. The freeform scenario system, the player chooses one of 8 protagonists, each with a unique opening scenario. Afterward, the world opens up almost entirely, offering immense freedom with minimal guidance. While earlier SaGa games were also non-linear, this entry refined the formula, weaving the player's free-form exploration into a subtle but cohesive overarching plot centered on the Death Eclipse. The ambition behind this project was staggering, and some of it remains hidden within the final product. The game features character-specific minigames, most notably the large-scale wargame known as Commander Mode, exclusive to the ruler Mikhail. Kawazu's original grander vision was for players to be able to complete the entire game using these alternate mechanics. This was ultimately scaled back, with the traditional turn-based battle system remaining dominant, but it reveals the developer's intent to create multiple, fully viable playstyles within a single RPG. Romancing Saga 3 represents a divergent evolutionary path for JRPGs, one that champions player agency, systems mastery, and emergent discovery over a tightly directed narrative. Its 2019 remaster finally allowed Western players to understand why this legend of non-linear design is so revered. Langrisser, 1995. While Square was pushing the boundaries of non-linear storytelling, developer Messiah was preparing to shatter them completely. Der Langrisser is not a simple port of the Mega Drive's Langrisser II, it is a full-scale Super Famicom reimagining that introduced one of the most complex and morally ambiguous narrative structures of the entire 16-bit era. The game's defining feature is its revolutionary branching path system. Early in the story, the player, as the hero Erwin, is given a choice: remain loyal to the forces of light, or accept an offer to join the opposing Rhaegar Empire. This is not a simple, bad-ending choice. Accepting the offer fundamentally inverts the entire game. Former allies become your sworn enemies, whom you must hunt down, while former bosses and villains become your trusted commanders. This single decision point splinters the story, leading to 4 main paths: Light, Imperial, Independent, siding with no one, and Chaos, siding with the demons, which further branch into over 75 possible scenarios. The game's systems were so deep that the developers had to intentionally hold them back. A hidden debug code allows players to take control of enemy units, revealing a fascinating secret. High-level enemy mages possess incredibly powerful spells, like summoning a demon lord, but are programmed to almost never use them. The AI was deliberately hobbled, likely to prevent the game from becoming insurmountably difficult. Der Langrisser stands as a monument to player choice, proving that a 16-bit console could host a story where the very concepts of good and evil were not written by the developer but defined by the player. The late-era Super Nintendo was a technological battleground. As developers mastered the hardware, a competitive spirit emerged, pushing teams to achieve the impossible. This developer arms race is most evident in the story of 2 rival games, Tales of Phantasia and Star Ocean. Born from a dramatic studio schism, their parallel development saw each team trying to one-up the other, resulting in 2 of the most technically audacious RPGs ever released on a cartridge-based system. Tales of Phantasia in 1995. Developed by Wolf Team and published by Namco, Tales of Phantasia originated from an unpublished novel by its lead programmer, Yoshiharu Gotanda. The game's development was notoriously fraught with conflict, as the ambitious vision of the team clashed with the demands of its publisher, Namco. Despite the turmoil, Wolf Team achieved a technical miracle. Tales of Phantasia stunned the Japanese market by featuring a full vocalized opening theme song, Yume wa Owaranai, on a standard Super Famicom cartridge. At the time, this was considered impossible due to the severe memory limitations of the console's sound chip, the Sony SPC700, which only had 64 kilobytes of dedicated audio RAM. The feat was accomplished through a custom programmed sound engine called the Flexible Voice Driver. This brilliant piece of software rapidly streamed and swapped thousands of tiny, compressed vocal samples from the game's massive 48 megabit ROM and into the audio RAM on the fly, reassembling them into a coherent song. However, the creative friction with Namco reached a breaking point. Immediately after the game was finished, a significant portion of the core staff, including programmer Yoshiharu Gotanda, designer Masaki Norimoto, and composer Motoi Sakuraba, left Wolf Team to found their own independent studio, Tri-Ace. This single event, born from a troubled development, is the genesis of the entire Star Ocean franchise, creating a direct spiritual successor and a fierce technological rival to the very series its founders had just created. Star Ocean 1996. As the debut title from Tri-Ace, Star Ocean was a statement. It was the game the ex-Wolf Team developers wanted to make. Free from the publisher constraints they felt on Tales of Phantasia, they aimed for a bigger story and deeper, more creative gameplay systems, setting their new RPG in space and drawing heavy inspiration from Star Trek. To realize their graphically rich vision, they employed a piece of hardware magic that remains one of the Super Nintendo's most impressive technical feats. Star Ocean was one of only 2 games ever made to use the SDD1, a custom data decompression coprocessor built directly onto the game cartridge. This chip allowed Tri-Ace to store a massive amount of graphic data in a highly compressed format. When the Super Nintendo CPU requested a graphical tile from the ROM, the SDD1 chip would intercept the call, decompress the data on the fly, and feed the full, uncompressed graphic back to the console in real time. This effectively allowed the developers to fit what was essentially a 12 megabit game's worth of lush, detailed graphics onto a 6 megabit cartridge, double the apparent capacity. The SDD1's algorithm was not simple compression. It was a sophisticated, adaptive system combining 2 key techniques. 1. Galam coding, a form of run-length encoding that is exceptionally efficient at compressing long, repeating streams of data such as a large area of a single color in a background. 2. Context model. This was the true genius of the chip. Instead of reading data linearly, the SDD1 would analyze the pixels adjacent to the one it was decompressing. By using the colored data of these neighboring pixels as context, it could make an educated guess about the value of the current pixel's data bit, making the Golam coding vastly more effective. This combination of predictive modeling and adaptive hardware decompression was so complex that for years, Super Nintendo emulators were unable to run Star Ocean. The community's workaround was to create a graphics pack, a separate, massive 12 megabyte file containing all of the game's decompressed graphics, which the emulator would load into memory instead of trying to replicate the SDD1's magic. Treasure of the Rudras, 1996. As one of Square's final releases for the Super Famicom, Treasure of the Rudras, Rudra no Hiho, was a product of the company's Osaka division, staffed by veterans of Final Fantasy Mystic Quest and SaGa 3. In an era increasingly dominated by 3D polygons, the team made a conscious decision to push 2D pixel art to its absolute zenith. To do this, they gave their enemy sprites a level of fluid animation rarely seen in Square's turn-based RPGs, making battles feel dynamic and alive. The game's most legendary feature, however, is its mantra magic system. In a stroke of design genius, players do not learn or find spells. They create them by literally writing them out. The system is built on a custom language of prefixes, elemental cores, and suffixes. For example, a player could combine the fire root IG with the multi-target suffix NA to create Igna, a spell that hits all enemies with fire. The game's logic would parse the constructed word and generate a unique spell with corresponding power, MP, cost, and effects. Players were encouraged to experiment, even typing in their own names or random words to see what magical effects they might produce. This brilliant system was also a translator's nightmare. For fan translator Gideon G. of Aeon Genesis, localizing the game was not merely a matter of translating text. The mantra system was hard-coded to recognize Japanese phonetic characters, kana, and the Japanese language can express a wider range of sounds with fewer characters than English. A simple translation was impossible. To make the system functional in English, G had to perform extensive ROM hacking, fundamentally rewriting the game's code to double the character limit for mantras from 6 to 12, and altering the input screens and parsing logic to recognize Roman letters. It is a prime example of fan translation as a high-level programming achievement, rescuing a game whose core mechanic was inextricably tied to the code of its native language. During the Super Nintendo's final years, Square was a hotbed of creative freedom, with the company's A-list teams likely already transitioning to the PlayStation to work on titles like Final Fantasy VII. Other development divisions were given unprecedented license to experiment. This skunkworks environment resulted in a flurry of genre-bending hybrids and conceptually bold games that might never have been greenlit in another era, representing a final brilliant burst of creativity on the 16-bit console. Front Mission Gun Hazard, 1996. A spin-off of the mainline Front Mission tactical RPG series, Gun Hazard threw the established formula out the window, shifting genres completely to become a side-scrolling action RPG. Its gameplay, featuring customizable mechs called Wanzers in real-time combat, was heavily inspired by another cult classic, Assault Suits Vulcan, released as Cybernator in the West. This was no coincidence. The game was developed by Omiya Soft, a studio which included key staff from Messiah, the creators of Vulcan. What truly sets Gun Hazard apart is its legendary soundtrack, composed by a dream team of Square's greatest musical talents. The score features the combined work of Nobuo Uematsu, Final Fantasy, Yasunori Mitsuda, Chrono Trigger, Masashi Hamauzu, SaGa Frontier 2, and Junya Nakano, Threads of Fate. Assembling this Mount Rushmore of composers for a spin-off title is a testament to the creative energy at Square at the time. However, this masterpiece came at a great personal cost. In a poignant anecdote, Nobuo Uematsu recalled that his collaborator, Yasunori Mitsuda, worked so relentlessly and poured so much of himself into the game's industrial, mechanical score that he was eventually hospitalized from exhaustion. This story offers a stark, humanizing glimpse into the immense passion and pressure that fueled the creation of these late-era classics. Bahamut Lagoon, 1996. Developed by a team of fresh talent at Square, including future luminaries like director Kazushige Nojima and writer Motomu Toriyama, Bahamut Lagoon is one of the most unique tactical RPGs of its time. The game's central mechanic is raising dragons by feeding them weapons, armor, and items, which directly influences their stats, abilities, and evolution. In battle, however, these dragons are not under the player's direct control. They are AI-driven companions who follow general commands like go or wait. This was a deliberate choice by programmer Hiroshi Ono and designer Hitoshi Sasaki, who wanted the dragons to feel like independent, unpredictable pets rather than controllable units. The game's development history hides two astonishing facts. First, its original working title was, in fact, Final Fantasy Tactics. This reveals that the initial concept for what would become one of the most beloved strategy RPGs of all time began its life here on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System before it was handed off and evolved into the PlayStation masterpiece we know today. Second, an early abandoned idea for the Dragon Raising system was far more brutal than what made it into the final game. Developers considered having the AI dragons fight and even eat each other during battles. This feature was likely cut for technical or tonal reasons, but it hints at a much more primal and savage vision for the game's central mechanic. Seiken Densetsu 3 Trials of Mana, 1995. As the direct sequel to the globally successful Secret of Mana, Seiken Densetsu 3 was one of the most anticipated RPGs of its generation. Its failure to release outside of Japan made it one of the most famous lost games for Western fans for over 2 decades. The game was a technical and artistic showcase, pushing the Super Nintendo with gorgeous, vibrant graphics, massive sprites, and a highly replayable story structure that allowed players to choose a protagonist and 2 companions from a cast of 6, with the main plot changing based on the lead character. For years, fans who imported the game or played the groundbreaking fan translation lamented one missing feature: the 3-player cooperative gameplay that made its predecessor, Secret of Mana, a multiplayer legend. The secret buried in the game's code is that Seiken Densetsu 3 was designed for 3 players all along. A fully functional, albeit disabled, 3-player mode exists within the game's ROM. By using a cheat device or simply changing 2 bytes of code in a hex editor, this feature can be completely re-enabled. Its near-complete state suggests it was a core part of the design that was cut at the last minute, possibly due to bugs or concerns about hardware slowdown, depriving a generation of fans of a key feature they expected from the sequel. Further exploration of the game's code reveals extensive debug rooms allowing access to any location, a boss rush mode, including an unused squid boss, a full sound test, and even a way to view all the game's endings. Lennus II, Apostles of the Seals, 1996. Perhaps the most obscure and tragic story on this list belongs to Lennus II, Apostles of the Seals. The sequel to Lennus, an oddball RPG released in the US as Paladin's Quest, Lennus II is a sprawling, ambitious epic with a development history defined by immense personal sacrifice. Director and writer Hidenori Shibao has openly described the project as being cursed. Originally planned as a 2-year project, its development time ballooned to 4 years. During this grueling period, Shibao's personal income plummeted. He went from earning a comfortable 20 million yen a year, writing video game strategy guides, to just 2 million yen a year, while pouring his life into his passion project. The resulting game is unique, featuring unconventional mechanics like using HP instead of a traditional MP system for magic, and a system where all healing is dependent on refillable bottles. It also includes a mercenary system where hired party members can demand payment and will abandon the player, taking all their equipped gear with them if refused. Upon its release in mid-1996, deep into the PlayStation's life cycle, Lennus II was a commercial disaster, a huge bomb, in Shibao's own words. Its failure in the market directly led to the cancellation of the planned Lennus III, killing the franchise. The story of Lennus II serves as a powerful cautionary tale of boundless creative ambition colliding with the harsh realities of the video game market, a testament to the immense risks taken by developers during the final days of a dying console. The evidence is clear and overwhelming. The period from 1995 to 1996 was not a twilight for the Super Nintendo in Japan, but a spectacular creative crescendo. The games born from this era were not footnotes. They were bold declarations of mastery over a machine that the rest of the world was ready to leave behind. We have seen a developer schism over Tales of Phantasia give birth to a lifelong rival in Star Ocean, with both teams pushing audio and data compression technology to its absolute limits. We have uncovered the secret origin of Final Fantasy Tactics, buried in the design documents of Bahamut Lagoon, and found the ghost of a third player haunting the code of Seiken Densetsu 3. These stories, and the games themselves, would have remained lost to time and language if not for the passion and technical brilliance of the fan translation community. Their work as digital archaeologists preserved a vital chapter of gaming history, making this very analysis possible. These 10 games proved that developer ingenuity is not solely dependent on processing power. They are a testament to what is possible when immense talent, creative freedom, and years of experience are focused on a single, well understood piece of hardware. They represent the final brilliant secret of the 16-bit era, a secret that, now unearthed, proves that the Super Nintendo's true power and legacy are even greater than we ever imagined.